What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about 2019, because as far as gaming goes, this has been a very chaotic year. It seems like we're probably going to get a totally new console generation coming up very soon, with the next Xbox, the PlayStation 5, and maybe perhaps some sort of Nintendo Switch Pro. But despite the fact that Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo are very obviously hard at work at that, they've been spending this entire last couple months making very careful attacks against each other, trying to make sure that this console war stays very competitive. Now in general, what I want to be trying to do here is really try and take a step back and look at who won, who managed to make the biggest difference in gaming, and what they managed to do very wrong. Now I have the advantage, of course, that I own all the systems. I'm able to play everything, I'm able to see everything, and I'm able to check out some of the biggest dumpster fires. And what I noticed is that 2019 has certainly been a lot more of a tumultuous year. It seems like everybody is a little bit terrified. Let's start off by just talking about Xbox One. Now, it's pretty clear that Microsoft is currently very much trying to prepare for the next cycle. They're trying to do their best to buy game studios, managing to try and expand their programs. They're trying to make it where, even if they manage to lose the 8th generation, they're much more prepared for what's coming up in the 9th generation. And I have to say, I'm definitely the most disappointed in Xbox right now. Not because it sucks. I actually think the Xbox One had a good year, but we have to just admit, there was definitely the least amount of exclusives when it comes to Xbox. They didn't really have anything to totally be a must-buy seller. But what they did do that was exceptionally right, that I have to just say was a huge freaking thing, this year they greatly expanded Game Pass. It seems like what their plan is that they're trying to make it where instead of just selling you like 2 or 3 big $60 games every single year, what they're trying to do instead is to try and get like the 20 million or 15 million people who own an Xbox to get Games Pass and have people pay a couple dollars a month, which at the end of the day ends up meaning they get a lot more profit. Now what's interesting is Games Pass has started to just really build up an enormous library, and now Microsoft is doing it where every one of their games, the day it comes out, is free on Games Pass, which means that if you're playing something like, even something huge like Outer Worlds, this is a 100-hour-long RPG with great jokes and cool graphics, and it is just completely free on Games Pass. If you're paying like the $5 a month, so technically not free, but if you're paying like the $5 a month, you can play all these games completely for free, and it's not even streamed. This is literally like legit. It is cheaper than freaking Netflix and about 10 times the value. I have to say, I am very disappointed though that we didn't see more actual games from Microsoft. All we really got was Crackdown 3, which in my opinion flat out sucked, and some like little tiny indie projects. There wasn't anything on here that kind of blew my mind. I did really like Gears of War 5, but even then, I feel like it instantly kind of slipped out of my mind. After it stopped being a giant online community, once people started just beat the campaign and did a little bit of co-op and obviously did a lot of versus multiplayer, everybody kind of moved on. It didn't have the same staying power as Gears 1, 2, or 3, and it definitely didn't stick around as much as Gears of War 4, and so because of it, it's kind of sad to say that everything Microsoft related this year has kind of just come and went. This is definitely not the case when it comes to PlayStation though. The PS4 this year, they took a very different tactic. So in 2018, I have to say that pretty easily, I think we can all agree that when it comes to 2018, Sony absolutely killed it. The PlayStation 4, hands down, completely dominated last year. They managed to mostly do this by having giant AAA releases. God of War and Spider-Man were on basically everybody's Game of the Year list, and it was a very hot contention talking about which one is actually better. This year though, Sony took a different idea, which is that they're already so much in the lead. I mean, Sony at this point has over 100 million PlayStation 4 sold. So instead of trying to churn out a bunch more exclusives, what they've been doing is, it seems like what they're doing now is they're just trying to get everybody on their platform. We saw a ton of third-party support this year, and it seems like every single third-party game sells the best on PlayStation. Whether you're talking about the giant things like Call of Duty or little just indie things like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, these games end up being the most successful on Sony, which of course makes the PlayStation 4 an ever bigger success. And it seems like Sony's tactic now is to just make sure that they have all the advertising rights. It seems like this year, there were very few PlayStation 4 games that managed to just melt my brain because they were amazing, so much as that there were really good studios that happened to be making games on PlayStation. I would say the number one thing this year that really kind of actually it seemed so impressive that I was a little bit stunned that Sony had a hand on it was Dreams. If you didn't check this out, it was like a little $20 thing. You paid $20 up front and you got access to a beta. It was like an early version of Dreams, but calling it a beta seems a little bit inaccurate. This is a game engine. It allows you to construct and play custom creations. And the player base that's really been constructing around this has become some of the most creative people on the entire internet, managing to replicate big giant demos. They managed to make things like Silent Hills and things like Dead Space inside of this game engine. And it's all apparently very, very easy. As somebody who is very dumb, I know I'm not a very smart guy, I'm just like a gamer, I like Dreams a lot because it gives me that nice random taste of what's coming next. So every time I get on there, a lot of times I like to just click the hottest games right now button and see what has the most likes, what has the most stuff like that, and to just subscribe to those creators to see what they're making next. Because I like the fact that there is just so many people that are out there making weird stuff inside of Dreams. I do think that it's possible that coming up next year, they may start actually trying to advertise this harder once the full release comes out. I'm very happy that Dreams came out, but I gotta say, I wish that Sony actually funded more of these projects. Sony has a ton of money in game development, billions and billions of dollars. I wish that they would actually spend more of that purchasing and trying to support this indie-ish content a lot more. Give us those weird things alongside the giant AAA projects like Ghost of Tsushima. I am happy about some of the things that were on PlayStation and were exclusive, like Death Stranding, but it's certainly been a lot more of a downtrodden year. I guess I'm okay with that. Or maybe it's just the fact that it seems like it's quieter because just if we have to look at it, by far the biggest winner this year, and I think we can all agree, was the Nintendo Switch. Now that sounds like a pretty crazy statement, but just objectively, we can look at the math and see that they had by far the most exclusives. Things like Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion, all the DLC that came out for Super Smash Bros. I actually wrote a list down here, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Fire Emblem Three Houses, the Cadence of Hyrule. There was so much on Nintendo Switch that did very much impress me. And I think we have to kind of acknowledge that the Nintendo Switch is getting a huge push from third-party support as well. The same way that the PlayStation 4 is managing to become like the big giant juggernaut of gaming because it's so ubiquitous, I think that there is a new space, which is that a lot of game developers are now porting games to the Nintendo Switch, even if they have to make sacrifices to do it. Like this year we obviously had The Witcher freaking 3. This is one of the longest games that has ever been released. It is so enormous and it is now on a freaking handheld for $60 freaking dollars. It is like 500 hours of game if you tried to do every quest and all the DLC, all of it, and that is just so nutso. I have to say that I love a lot of what all three companies did this year. I really like Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. They're definitely still trying. This has not been a lazy year. But when it comes to just raw, actual craziness, the one company I think managed to put up the most awesome content, we have to just say, Nintendo, way to freaking go. More than even that, we have to just take a second here to say the Switch Lite was a giant innovation. One of the biggest roadblocks, I think, to the Switch's success was the fact that it was $300 when a lot of the other consoles started to get to $250 or $200. I mean, even if you're one of those people that's like, graphics don't matter, I don't care about pixels, we still have to kind of say that the average gamer probably does care in some capacity as to resolution and graphics. But I think now that the Nintendo Switch has an option that's just as cheap as all the other systems, but is also a handheld, it's finally getting that attention that's much more mainstream. I'm curious what comes next. It's a little bit difficult to try and even predict, but I do think that the potential as to what could be coming next is enormous. 2020 is going to be a freaking bombshell year. It is going to be a battlefield where everybody is trying to compete for your attention. And already I'm kind of aching to see what those reveals are like. When we finally get the unveiling of the PlayStation 5, the Xbox 2, and the Switch Pro, it is going to be a very, very tasty day. Okay, well, these have just been my thoughts. What do you think? Tell me your favorite games and your favorite fails of the year, because I would love to hear about them. You guys rock. Thank you so much for watching. And do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. I'm actually finishing up a video right now of worst games of 2019. That'll be up Thursday about noon. Be ready. It's going to be insane. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.